Thank you very much for the opportunity. I feel actually very humbled by the invitation, but I really do love operations research. I can hear from Lisa that she also loves operations research. We will jump at any opportunity to speak about that. So thank you very much for that. I will first talk about recognition, and then I will reflect on my career in operations research, and then talk briefly about my current endeavors, and then I will round off with a reflection on women, specifically then in operations research. Okay, now, when I started looking for significant women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, these are just some of the pictures that came up. There are many, 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 many more. So yeah, sometimes I'm asking myself, why do we still need to focus on women in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics? Because there's many women that made a significant mark in the field. But it wasn't always like that. And one of the champions talking about women in science, technology, engineering, mathematics was a lady called Matilda Gage. And I really like reading the things that she wrote many years back. She was suffragette, and she was one of those people that Lisa referred to that fought for example, the voting rights for women. I can't imagine that there was an idea that women cannot vote, but people really had to fight for it, and she was one of them. And when we talk about women, we talk about gender. And when we talk about gender, we talk about cultural roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes expected of people based on their biological sex. And Lisa also referred to this, how we dress and how we behave. And that is influenced by our cultures. So it also differs in different cultures. And then gender identity is our own sense of our gender. With which gender do we identify? And Lisa also referred to that. So as women, what sense do we have as a woman? Because that gender identity that we have determines how we express that gender. The manner in which we choose to present our gender to others, in our physical appearance and our behaviors. And Lisa again talked quite extensively about this. How do we dress? How do we act? She said that we can still have our soft approach if we build our hammer. So we don't have to become someone else. We don't have to change our identity. And I think it's very important to have those cultural roles. And I think we must think very carefully of what roles and what behaviors do we present. If we talk about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, so we talk about now women in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. This whole idea of science, technology, engineering, mathematics was promoted in the America Creating Opportunities to Meaningfully Promote Excellence in Technology, and then the acronym of STEM was devised. That was 2007. Then there was a lot of additional studies, and in 2011 the acronym was extended to become STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. because there was quite extensive studies done globally, and they realized that the world don't only need science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but we need full-rounded people. We also do need arts. We are not only left-brainers and right-brainers. We are full-brainers. We each have received a full brain. I do know that some people cannot utilize their full brain due to challenges, but many of us can, and I think we should. Then later on, or actually concurrently, there were additional studies, and they realized, but moving into the 21st century, we don't only need science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. There's certain skills and character traits that we need. And again, there were many different studies, and if I could call it meta studies, studies of studies. And then they came up with quite an extensive list. And now we cannot use an acronym anymore because it's quite a list. And you can see that at the bottom of the screen. We have problem solving, and we have innovation, and we have ICT literacy and things like that. But we also have things like citizenship and resilience and patience and respect and work ethics and leadership and communication and confidence. So it's not only a full brain, but a full person that we need. So if we talk about recognition of women in, well, I'm asking science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but shouldn't we then add the arts, and shouldn't we add all these other character traits? The recognition that why I was invited concerns Fellows of Operations Research Society of South Africa. Now, I assume most of you know that any member of ORSSA may nominate a full member of ORSSA for consideration to be invited to become a fellow of the society by submitting the person's full names and contact details, well, not only of the nominee, but also of the nominator and the seconder. And then the important thing is they must a detailed motivation be prepared for such nomination. And this, to me, is quite significant. Because if there's not people nominating other people to be invited to become a fellow of the society, then it will not happen. So if we look at who wrote those detailed motivations, that's an interesting picture. You can see that Jan wrote 4 and that Wim Gevers wrote 2. But you can also see that there's quite a number of women who wrote those detailed motivations for people to become fellows. Right, so that was just sort of the introduction. So let me quickly reflect on my career in operations research. It's interesting that it was really, I really enjoyed Lisa's presentation. I will refer back quite a few times to that. When I went to university, I also thought maybe computers, but in my first year I realized not computers. I'm not a techie. I'm not going to sit in front of a computer my whole life. I just want to use a computer as a tool, as you know, as a fork or a knife to do something with. Yeah, and eventually I fell into operations research, and I just loved it, and I still love it. So then I completed my studies. In computer science, and then I continued to become a lecturer at the Vaal Triangle Technikon, where I taught information systems, installation management, and operational research methodology, the digital systems, and computer skills. Why I'm listing this is I think that's one of the reasons why I love operations research. It's such a wide field. There's so many possibilities. Because I remember when I was in matric, I said to people, I don't want to go and study something and I know that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I want to do something where every year I can do something different. And I'm so grateful that operations research allows us to, do many different things. And while I was a lecturer at the Royal Triangle Technikon, I did a master's in operations research on a challenge for operations research. I like, critically reflecting and challenging things. So I wanted to see. So I can lecture all these subjects at the Technikon, but can I use operations research to do anything meaningful for street children? So I endeavored, that took quite a number of years. And I used things like viable system modeling, interactive planning, soft systems methodology, and critical systems heuristics. And I think in the end, I hope that I did something meaningful for other people. That was my intention. But I learned so much. I learned so much from street children, or then rather children on the street. And I learned so much from the organizations working with the children. So I really learned a lot through those studies. Then at the Technikon, I moved on to curriculum development. So I wasn't the lecturer anymore, and I looked at the curricula that they used at the Technikon, and I could do that as an operations researcher. And I really like, besides operations research, something which I really also like is action research, because I really want to make a difference with that, what I'm busy with. I still believe, like when they started using the term operations research, they wasn't sure whether they want to call it operations research or applied philosophy. And for me, operations research is applied philosophy. I believe we must be very clear on our theoretical underpinnings, and then we must apply it in real life. Go and test it out. So whatever theory or philosophy there is, we must try it out in the real world and see what the effect is, and learn from our mistakes. So I thoroughly enjoyed those years when I did curriculum development, and we did so many different research projects to learn how we could do it, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. So then I moved to Sasol, and I did quite a number of projects at Sasol, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Sasol. Again, I learned so much from many different people on many different projects. So, for example, I was involved in a big project on demand management scheduling, where we used software on top of the ERP system to do demand management and scheduling, working in an interdisciplinary team, people from many different backgrounds, people from different companies, people from different nationalities. We just had so much fun. And in the end, we did have a system that one of the business units in Sasol could utilize. I think they must still be using it to actually do their scheduling and their planning and forecasting and things like that. Then I worked on a project to look at the document management system. You can also regarded as part of knowledge management, because we need to systematically document our knowledge so that it's available for everyone in the company. So again, that was a very nice project. Then I was involved in a business process modeling project where we modeled the business processes of different business units. And again, it was people from many different backgrounds, many different nationalities, different companies, working together. And again, it was really very rewarding. Then I did some planning and scheduling models using mixed integer nonlinear programming. So I decided I will just refer to mathematical programming, because in real life, it's very seldomly nice and neat linear or non-integer or things like that. It's quite messy. And very often we have to be very pragmatic to make something work and make something be useful. So again, referring back to the presentation by Lisa, she said she never settles for good enough. She strives for excellence. In projects like these, I became a good enougher, because we can really have very nice models and very sophisticated mathematics, but in the end, it must give results, and it must give results with imperfect data and in very short time periods. So for me, good enough is definitely good enough. The next project that I worked on was the a coal value chain optimization project. And there we used many different methods or technologies, if you want to call it that way. Mathematical programming, again, all the different variants thereof, discrete event simulation, including computer experiments, meta-heuristics. So we had a planning model and a scheduling model, and integrating that with one another and integrating it with models of other businesses and giving input to group planning. Again, it was really a very rewarding project, using different approaches, different people with different backgrounds from different business units, and even different companies. That was quite a long project, a 5-year project, and they are still using some aspects thereof. Then I became interested in employment equity and using system dynamics to get a better understanding and to look at different scenarios and to see which levers do we have to pull, what are the effects of the different levers, and what do we want to achieve by it, and why do we want to do it. So I've built many different system dynamics models for different business units, and yeah, I really enjoy doing that. That for me, that was again, yeah, Lisa also referred to the hard and the soft, and very often in operations research we talk about hard operations research and soft operations research and critical operations research and liberating operations research. I think what's important is to complement different approaches with one another. To complement, for example, quantitative analysis with qualitative analysis. And again, that brings me back to the applied philosophy, complementing different theories with one another and complementing different worldviews with one another. Right. Then I moved to organizational culture management. And again, I could do that as an operation researcher. I think one of the backgrounds or skills that I could bring to the table is a more quantitative approach. We use the cultural transformation tools developed by Richard Barrett. And he also is an engineer, and he had quite a bit of, let me call it, quantitative stuff in his approach and in his tools. But I really enjoyed, for example, doing proper risk management. And not only saying, okay, we need to do something about the culture of the company, but let's analyze what are the problems. Let's get a proper business case to do it. And we also use the biomatrix model, using systems thinking, looking at the big picture. It's almost like in dynamics. It's looking at the different levers we have in the company and the different aspects that's, for example, influencing the culture. And if you want to influence the culture in a specific way, which levers do you pull? How do you do that? And what we're finding, and for me, operations research is not only applied philosophy, but also systems thinking. And sometimes we pull a lever, but then something happens that we didn't expect, because we can never have the full picture. No person has the full picture of, for example, a company. So what's happening right now, but also in time. We cannot forecast what's going to happen in future. And then getting the feedback, and then what do you do with that? And how do we progress? And how do we work with what's working well, what we have? And that's where appreciative inquiry comes in. In operations research, we very often talk about problems. But I think we should talk more about opportunities. Finding the stuff that's working well and see, but how can we expand on that, and how can we build on that? And not only focusing on what's wrong and what needs to be fixed. So yeah, I enjoyed that for a couple of years. And then I went to the Inzalo Foundation, working in education. And I was given the responsibility to look at the Saturday school that was struggling a bit, and to see why are they struggling and what can be done for them to make a difference in many children's lives. So there I started using the Cynefin framework, and using, for example, categorization workshops. Just a little side note there. Very often, I don't know how many of you, maybe all of you, are familiar with the Cynefin framework, but very often we find these models. It's not only the Cynefin framework. It's many of these other tools that we have in operations research. We, for example, the system of systems methodologies is another good example of that. We classify a problem. Is it, for example, now a simple problem, or is it a complex problem, or is it politics involved, or is it a type of cultural problem? Or we classify the problems, then we find, aha, it's a brain metaphor that we're going to use, and then we go and we address the situation using that metaphor. But what's important for me, what I realized in the Cynefin framework, is that we have different perceptions of the same situation. So for me, it might be complex, but for another person, it might be simple. And for me, the value in it then is to have that conversation. Why is it complex to me? Why is it simple to the other person? So how do we approach the situation from these different perspectives, and how do we work together to address the situation, to have something meaningful for everyone? We also use future backwards workshops. We use something similar to the sense maker, and yeah, I really like that to look at questionnaires, for example, where you have a lot of open-ended questions, and that's where content analysis came in for me, and also different scales and interpreting different scales. So this for me was where I could use the quantitative data analysis in supplementation to the qualitative content analysis, and coming to a richer picture of the situation, and yeah, working with all the stakeholders so that we can have a meaningful change. Okay, then I moved on to looking at how can talent security inform our corporate social responsibility at the company. And I want to jump there right to the data analysis. We analyzed data over many years and many different data elements. For at least over 5 years, we looked at resignation data and many other data elements. So there we really had a lot of data that we analyzed. Together with, again, qualitative data, we analyzed emails, almost 400 emails that we've analyzed, and looking for the patterns, and then confirming or not confirming it, for example, through the quantitative data, and finding a better understanding, looking at the different data elements that we had. We used the biomatrix model, the cultural transformation tools, the Cynefin framework, and systems diagrams. Come up with, okay, so now we want to address our talent security through corporate social responsibility, but what do we do? What does it entail? What do we need to do? Do we need to build schools, or do we need to build new parks, or do we need to have a university, or do we need to get a big shopping center, or what is it that we need to do? So I really enjoyed that again for a couple of years. And one of the interesting aspects, yeah, the previous one where one of the previous projects where we looked at the culture of the company, that was interesting for me to work in the human resource department and to learn from that. And in this, the talent security project, I worked in the corporate social responsibility department, working with other people and learning a lot from them, and the way they perceive situations and approach situations. So every time there's such a richness in all these different people that they can contribute and work together. Right, then my current endeavors. Again, I thought, okay, so I've done now quite a few projects for a big corporate company. What about the non-profit organizations? So that work, when I work with children on the street, I also worked a lot with what we call non-profit organizations. And I felt the need to work with non-profit organizations again. And I also think a lot about sustainability. What makes something sustainable, and what is sustainability? So, and I look at different organizational forms like big corporations and micro enterprises, and what is the idea? Do we all these organizations, do they have a limited time span like people? Because we're not going to live forever here on Earth. And maybe organizations also have a limited time span. There's time for them to start, and there's a time for them to close down. And if we talk about micro organizations and small organizations and non-profit organizations, how do they start, and what do they start, and then how does their lifespan look like, and when do they need to close down, and why do they need to close down? So I look at things like that. I'm using a lot of content analysis. And yeah, I've also now used commercial software. The previous content analysis I always did with freeware. There's a lot of good content analysis software available for free, but now I also used some commercial software for that. I looked at organizational models for sustainability. And then again, many of the approaches, let me call it approaches that I've used before. I also now use the dynamic equilibrium modeling, and for me that was also very interesting. It's almost like that defines sustainability, maybe for me, from my perspective, because what it's about is that we constantly live in paradox. And sustainability for me is to constantly address the paradox. And dynamic equilibrium modeling is a good way of, for me, it's a model for me to think about this, to think about, okay, what paradox are we experiencing here, and how can we address the paradox? Sustainability is not happy camping forever and ever. It's not and they lived happily ever after. Sustainability is a continuous struggle. And we can see that everywhere around us in nature for so many years, in different population groups for so many years. It's to keep on looking at what is the paradox, and how do we address it. The as well as, the and. Sustainability for me is not the either or thinking. It's the and thinking for me. Yeah, so I really enjoy doing this. Yeah, just a side note, I was recently at a conference, and someone was very impressed with it, that I'm self-employed, and she wanted to join me and so forth. And I said to her, okay, so you must realize that I don't earn an income for that. And she said, oh, no. Then she will look at something else. So that's also an interesting path for me to walk currently. Okay, so let me conclude. Reflecting on women in operations research. And I want to ask a few questions, and I'm asking these questions to myself as well. I'm not asking these questions to those out there. I'm asking it to myself. And one of the questions that I'm asking myself, it's my reflection, is how do I portray my gender? What do people see if they see me? What do they experience? Do I allow women to be women in the full sense of all it entails? Do I allow men to be men in everything that entails? And what does it mean to be a woman? And what does it mean to be a man? And how do we complement one another or supplement one another, similar to quantitative approaches and qualitative approaches and all different other approaches that I've used? How do we supplement one another? Then I know the other Lovelace Day is about celebrating women in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but I'm wondering, I suppose if we expand it, it won't be the other Lovelace Day anymore. But what about all these other skills and character traits? What about things like respect? What about things like resilience, of mindfulness, of adaptability? How do I role model that? And if it's great, and as I said, I really loved working in all these different teams with all the abilities many different people bring from their different backgrounds. And for me, that is really something very special about operations research, is the diversity, is all the different fields, all the different backgrounds, all the different people with all the different abilities, with all the strengths that we can really supplement one another. Operations research, I believe, cannot be done by an individual. You have to work in a team. We have to supplement one another, because I do not have the full picture, and I can never have the full picture. I need other people to supplement my view and to challenge me, and to have a something meaningful that we do in life. And then I also challenge myself in the recognition, because I have not nominated anyone to become a Fellow of ORSSA yet. And I'm asking myself, but why haven't I done so? And I want to challenge everyone that's tuned in currently. How do we give recognition to other people? Formal, big recognition like a Fellow of ORSSA, but also small, tiny recognitions when we walk in the street. I believe the world needs more recognition, and I'm ashamed that I don't think I have given enough recognition. Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate that, and I have high regard for the people, for the ladies and the gentlemen involved this evening in organizing this event, and in celebrating women in operations research. Thank you.